11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to another episode, our first episode in a new series. What we're rebranding our, what are we calling this thing? Echoes of Liberty? Is that what, I don't remember what I called this thing. I go look at the thumbnail. But we're rebranding our interview show on Mondays, and we're kicking it off with John. I don't know how many times John and I have been on each other's podcast, but I know you've got a book coming out, so it gives us an opportunity to chat about that. Right on, Masters of Firepower. I thought if it's cool with you, since we've chatted before, but who knows who's listening to this now, live or in the future, maybe give us a couple minutes, say hey, and give us kind of a elevator speech bio before we get going.
Sure. My name is John Crump. I am an investigative journalist. I work with MLN.com. I'm also special projects for GOA, which means I do a lot of different things with the legal team behind the scenes, and also with the legislative team, the guys that are up on the Hill every day. Work with all those guys, do research, stuff like that, try to get to information before it actually comes out so we can be prepared to handle it. So I deal a lot with ATF leaks, Department of State leaks, Commerce Department leaks, wherever, different state leaks and stuff like that. So I do all that. I'm an activist too for gun rights, and I am a huge fan of firearms designers, and I run a couple different YouTube channels: John Crump News, John Crump Live, which is my podcast, and every Monday night at 10 p.m. on Rumble, we do Uncensored, which is our uncensored podcast, the stuff that we can't talk about on here, and that everything goes to audio only as well.
Right on. It's almost like you've done that a couple of times before.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the book, and then, like I said in the description, we can chat about what's been going on since the last time we've chatted a bit. But
there's been a lot going on.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's been a while since we've actually been on a show. I mean, I've said hey, and you've said hey in the chats and stuff. But yeah, if we tried to catch up on everything that's happened since we were last live, that would take forever. Oh, but Masters of Firepower. So you kind of mentioned there you do a bunch of different things. You have done a bunch of stuff over the years. So where did the idea come from? Well, I guess first off, tell us about the book.
Okay, the book is 20 iconic firearms designers. There was actually 25 originally iconic firearms designers. The book was actually twice the size of what it turned out to be. It's about 500 to some pages. Originally, it was over 1,000 pages, so I had to actually cut it down a little bit by a lot. But I've been working on it for probably over a year now, and it has it's a great cross section of firearms designers. I couldn't put everyone in there, but like it goes from for example, Henry Derringer was like the first person in the book, and then it ends up with Gadsden Glock. So it's everyone, Eugene Stoner, Kalashnikov, Sharps, bunch of different people.
Did you do them in chronological order, or
they're by date of birth? Then if they were both, I ran into a couple things where like they shared birthdays or whatever, and then I did date of death.
Gotcha. So then we had something similar when we both have done a little bit of research like this. I did the deck of cards a while back, and when I was going through, I knew I had 52, right, or 50, I guess, whatever. I knew I had a set number, and I had to get to that number. But I also, in the research, found way more than that. So I think we had something similar where we had to do some discretion. So what were your first goals when you said you had, more people included? Was it to cover like every aspect of firearms, or what was the goal?
It's impossible to cover every aspect of firearms. So originally I was like, well, I'll do 25. And when I wrote the book, it just was way too big. So I was like, I got to cut it down. So I got to chop off part of chapters. And then I have to pick. Hold on, sorry about that. I have to pick certain people to actually take out. So what I did is I looked at the different designs of firearms and the different lives of people, and I wanted to get as many different types of designs in there, and also the different types of life, because everyone comes from a different background. So I wanted to make sure that I had a bunch of different backgrounds, because the backgrounds are what's really interesting. We can talk about like their firearms designs all we want, and a lot of people know about that stuff, but a lot of people don't know about their actual backgrounds.
They're wild. So
Yeah.
like I've had some experience with researching them, just to see who was going to be involved, and then just had a fun time on a couple of them. So in the mix, do you have a favorite or a couple of favorites that had the most crazy lives?
Well, I mean, I do have a couple favorites. John Moses Browning.
We'll have them back here in a second. Internet issues, I'm assuming. So if you have any questions, drop them in here. And we'll see at the end here. If we got time, we'll. I think we only have them for an hour, so at the end we'll ask some questions if you got some. So somewhere I saw the list. Now I'm looking for it. I'm looking over at the Amazon. It says "Masters of Firepower: Chronicles of Iconic Firearms Designers" is an enthralling and comprehensive book that delves deep into the lives and contributions of the world's most renowned firearms designers. This captivating exploration takes readers on an illuminating journey through history,
Sorry about that.
no worries. Of genius and engineering, brilliance and shapes the evolution of firearms. I was just reading the first paragraph of your description there. So I was asking some of the more interesting lives.
Yeah. Like John Moses Browning, for example, what a lot of people don't realize is that his dad was a great firearms designer himself. And he started designing firearms when he was like, before he was even a teenager.
You're talking about Jonathan, the dad.
Yes.
Yeah. Seriously. And then his dad, said, yeah, I had to figure out where to stop because I was only writing a card. I need to put like a paragraph on there. But his dad, if I remember right, sold some land or something so that he could get his place in Illinois.
Yes.
He's making the harmonica gun. I've been to his place in Illinois. It's in Nauvoo, Illinois, or something like that. It's a town that was destroyed back in the day when they ran the religion out of there, and then bought the land back and have built some of the buildings. And his workshop is one of the buildings they rebuilt. So it's got a couple of examples of his guns there. But yeah, his story is crazy. And then, well, he goes on to have a couple of sons, and he has to stop because of the church asked him to quit. Essentially, they said, "Hey, build wagon wheels. We need those more."
Yeah. Yeah, he came from a very religious background.
I'm trying to think it's the Mormons. Yeah. So when the Mormons they kept, I mean, I didn't even know the story.
It's very interesting. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost is there's a bunch of interesting stories. It's just not all about the guns.
Oh, no, not at all. It totally normalizes them too when you start thinking about it. So that's Browning, obviously, number one thing most people think of, and his story is pretty cool too. You can go watch the video at his museum and get an idea of his story. And I don't know, has there been a good movie on Browning? There should be.
I don't think there has been. It would be a very interesting movie.
But then who else? We got Browning.
Casting Glock story is just insane.
Really, I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even get into like the 80-year-old guy with the assassin in the garage. I mean, that's like the that's like the cherry on top.
Yeah. And it's just like, the guy wasn't a gun guy. He didn't know anything about guns. He made curtain rods.
Seriously, and then changed the world. You said he's the last one in the book?
He's the last one. He's the only one that's still alive.
Oh, okay. So no Kellgren.
No, Kellgren. Kellgren was one of the ones that ended up on the cutting room floor.
Gotcha.
There's just too many. I might go ahead and release the other chapters like for free, which I probably will do.
How hard is it to edit this stuff? I mean, for me, it was, I did all the research and then edited it down to a paragraph, so it wasn't too tough, but it didn't take too long. How long was it to?
Well, I hired an editor, so I went back and forth.
Okay, that's smart.
So that was one of the advantages I had, but and also staying out of the weeds.
Right on. Well, still that can be tough to figure out because some of those weeds are interesting, but then they're
interesting to me,
but
interesting to you, but not
the
general public.
So, did you research Savage at all?
I did not research Savage.
Okay, if I had to answer that question, he'd be my. I mean, he had a crazy life. He ran around. He was like he something. I forget his early life. He started out, went to Australia, and I forget how many years he was in Australia. A couple of decades. He leaves Australia, one of the richest and largest cattle barons in Australia, and then I think if I'm remembering this guy right, builds his gun as a replacement for an old bolt action gun. Kind of moves on, keeps inventing stuff, invented a train, a submarine, I think a torpedo or something, and then eventually the radial tires, and died an old man race car driving and left his company, behind with a lot of other companies.
Like a lot of these guys design more than just firearms. Maxim, for example.
Right.
The muffler, which is how we got the silencer stuff. But yeah, a lot of these guys designed a lot more than just firearms. How I did it is I had like a list of 80, and then I narrowed it down to around 35, and then I researched those guys and found 25 that I found extremely interesting, and then from those 25 I edited it down to 20 that actually made the book.
Right on. So then you said it's 500 pages.
It's a little bit over 500 pages, but yeah.
It's coming out on Kindle already, and then it'll be...
Well, the Kindle version is up for pre-order. It will be in select Barnes & Noble stores and available on Amazon and everywhere on November 1st.
Starting tomorrow. Or wait, a couple of days.
A couple of days, yeah.
So how does that work? It's go through a publisher, or you do this yourself?
I created my own publisher. So a registered publisher, so I can get the ISBN numbers instead of just using the Amazon ones. And then I hooked up with a distributor, and it wasn't the cheapest way of doing it. But this is the way I can get into libraries and stuff like that.
Oh, really? Well, that's cool. Is that something that is difficult to do, getting it into libraries?
It's not difficult. It's not difficult as in hard. It can be a little bit on the pricey side because you have to
so it's not a thing like if the book exists and it's of value that they buy it. You have to go market it. You have to sell it.
Yeah, you have to market it. Well, you have to get it to a like a distributor, and you have to also get separate ISBN numbers and everything else like that, which can get a little bit pricey. You have to buy like either one for like I think it was like 150 for one ISBN, or you can get a block of them, a block of 10 for like 400. So you buy the 10 because every different version of it has to have a different number, like paperback and hardcover and Kindle and EPUB. They all have to have different numbers. So you're just better off buying that. And then you have to get an account with one of the distributors. And from there, they can submit it to it. It's there. So now it's in the distributors. Now you get to contact the libraries, and you got to pitch your book to the libraries. So you either do that yourself or you hire someone to do that for you.
Okay, so it's not something that, like, I was thinking it was like once the book exists, the libraries just go through a catalog and pick. It's more
No,
deliberate.
usually,
You have to know
that,
all the steps and then accomplish those and then take it to them.
yeah, that's not usually how it works. Um, Books that go into libraries are usually pitched by people.
So when you mention that, is that something that you've got specific libraries in mind?
Yeah, I mean, you basically create a letter, and that letter says why it's of value to that library, why it should be in that library. Not this is the greatest book in the world, or this book is awesome. This is what's in the book. It's like this is how it's going to benefit the people in your library, the benefit the people that go to the library.
I mean, I see how the benefit could be there for like a college library and a school library, just so that, again, to normalize guns, to give people this insight to the designers and the.
Yeah, well, you can't really say, well, I want to normalize guns or it's never
Yeah,
going to make
exactly.
it in a library. So you got to word it
Mhm.
very specifically. And there's people that's all they do is just write these letters.
All right, well, we kind of went off on a tangent there, but thanks for indulging me. So you've got 20 designers in here. You said you started with Derringer, who is ours. He's an American. And then you got Glock in there, who's, well, kind of an American at this point, but he's an Austrian or something. Did you pay any effort to what countries they come from?
That's mentioned in each chapter where they came from, but
I guess any balance where you're trying to reach every continent or as many.
I didn't try to reach every continent, but I do have like Flowbirds in there, Mauser, or Luger, uh, Von Dreisig. Uh, so there's a bunch of different ones. Galilei's in there. Lati is in there, Kalashnikov. So I don't touch every continent, but I do have a good mix of Europeans, even Israelis. Uzi's another guy that I wanted to have in there, but it ended up on the cutting room floor because just there's a lot more on Uzi out there than Galilei, so I chose him.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Like you say, there is already a bunch of stuff about Uzi, which is kind of available.
Yeah,
Was that a factor? Like, did you try to include people that hadn't been like featured in their own books? I'm sure Kalashnikov. I mean, I know Kalashnikov's got his books written about him.
sure.
Some others.
Yeah, I tried to balance it a little bit because everyone knows like John Moses Browning, Kalashnikov, Stoner, Glock. But those guys, I figured they had to be in there because they changed the world so much. But like other people, um, people they might not know about, live in there as well. So you put up the carrot, and the people go, "Oh, I want to read about John Moses Browning or Eugene Stoner or Kalashnikov or Glock or any of these guys," and then they learn about some other people. So I did that intentionally.
Right on. I noticed you got Garand or Garand. How do you say it?
There are so many people that say it each way.
So, but he's a Canadian, and that was an epic story. Also, building
Mhm.
it and then giving it to the government or giving it to our government.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of it just I think the whole entire thing is just going into these guys' backgrounds and actually thinking and looking at how they thought and why they created the design.
Yeah, like where it even came from, and that was I was able to find some like like American Rifleman or something, some old magazine articles from back in the day. So I don't know where those necessarily got the info, but I'm assuming from books or from maybe common knowledge back in the day or something. But hearing like why, well, like Gadsden for example, or Glock for example, we all kind of know it because the story is available. But the Austrians were looking for a gun, and he said, "Oh, I could try building a gun." But some of the others weren't as obvious. Some of the others were, like kind of they stumbled into it, or they wanted to do something and they got something else as a result, and then happy accident, and now they're famous.
Yeah, one of the things about Glock is he looked at guns and he's like, there's too many moving parts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's neat. And what did you use for references on like Glock, for example? Because you've read the Glock book, I'm sure, the Glock America's Gun.
Yeah, I read Glock America's Gun. I used that, but for Glock itself, I had around 150 sources. For the whole entire book, there was about 3,000 sources I went through.
Right on. And that's, again, magazine articles and stuff, or?
Magazine articles, other books, museum pieces, pulled old copies of papers, everything like that. Interviews for some people that were alive.
The interviews sounds interesting because that's something that we kind of take for granted, I think, now, because it's so easy. I mean, look, we're doing it. We arranged this a couple of days ago, and we're doing it, and kind of fairly professional without having to be fairly professional about it. But back in the day, to do an interview, it was a pretty big ordeal. There's a pretty famous group of interviews with Kalashnikov and Stoner when they met up in the United States. And I don't know if you've seen that channel that they have all those posted. But that was there was probably 13 people there, and all the effort and cost and everything to run whatever kind of video cameras they were running back then. So, yeah, I would imagine interviews are scarce. And then
but there are interviews, like one from Kalashnikov. He explains why he made the AK the way it did out of stamped metal, and his thinking was, if I make this thing so easy to make, so accurate, and so cheap to make that everyone will have it, then because everyone will have it, it will be basically like mutually assured destruction. And then no one would fight because everyone would have a cheap gun that can do a lot of damage. So it didn't work out the way he thought it was, but that was his thinking, which is definitely interesting.
I mean, maybe, when he thought about that, I'm sure it was a different world and it didn't come out exactly. But at the same time, it did change the world in a lot of ways. And
it did change the world, but the reason why he designed it's the way he did was that's the reason.
I see it in the description. You talk about, for example, James Belton, who invented a repeating gun in 1777. I'm not familiar with that one, but that certainly is useful when folks want to suggest that the Constitution was written with flintlocks or whatever. So was that intentional, or?
Yeah, absolutely was intentional. You caught me.
Right on. Take it.
Yeah, not a lot of people know about James Belton. He had a repeating rifle way before the Second Amendment was made. And they said, oh, okay, there's only flintlocks and everything. It was like, well, no, here's this repeating rifle. And the founding fathers were well aware of it.
Now, which one is this? Is this a multi-barrel thing, or is this the one that had like the cartridges in front of each other?
It had the cartridges.
Or I guess it was like a ball powder, or it was ball powder with a whole bunch of
so you can just boom, boom, boom.
But that's pretty cool. So even if the antis aren't going to read this, even some gun people read this and get that knowledge that they might not have had.
And it gives them tools to be able to call the anti-gun people out on their BS.
I wonder about that. When you write something, this is your second book now, right? Or is it more than that?
It's the second book that I have written under my name.
Oh, okay. So you've worked on other ones then?
I ghostwrite.
Okay, so then how much of this do you expect to be, when you write a book, this is kind of different than your other book, Speaking with Giants, which we got?
Yeah, it's interviews. Yeah, but I ghostwrite some other books.
But this one I could almost see you knew antis might read this because of the people that you interview in here.
Yeah.
And this is my signed copy, by the way. Thank you for that. But the new one, do you expect antis to read it? Was that anything?
Probably not. This isn't really like a pro gun, pro Second Amendment, or like spin. Like everything I do is pro gun, pro Second Amendment. But this is more of the designers' lives. It's not going to. I mean, there's certain nuggets in there, like for example, like the repeating rifle, that will allow you to use that against anti-gun people that claim that we only had muskets during when the Second Amendment was ratified. But that's not the reason why this book was written. This book was written specifically as a labor of love for firearms. Not really the Second Amendment, but for firearms themselves, how they work, the ingenious people that designed them, all the technology that went into them, the people that designed them, what their lives are like, why they designed it, why they made these choices, their past, their influences on the past. So even though that there is nuggets of Second Amendment wisdom in there, it is not specifically made to like combat the antis.
So you don't think it'll be like on their radar? They won't want to read this because it's just nuts and bolts gun stuff, and they don't care.
It's nuts and bolts gun stuff. It's more of, I mean, there's not really even that much opinion in there. It's just
it's facts. They don't want facts, and it's not the kind of facts they can use.
Correct.
Reading again from the description further along, it says the book explores the social and political ramifications of firearms design, shedding lights on the complex relationship between the weapons development, conflicts, and social evolution, or societal evolution. That sounds pretty interesting. Is that like let's say a designer like Colt, that's a tough one. So maybe, any of them really. It's a couple of designers only made one gun, but was it like for each designer you went into that, or like was that woven through?
Just for certain designers, because you cannot talk about the AK without the social implications. It's used around the world by everyone from freedom fighters to terrorists. So there is definitely social implications there of like what it became. It became a symbol of freedom fighters. I mean, it's on people's flags and stuff like that. So you cannot say that there's no social implications when there's countries that have the AK on their flag.
It's on the money, yeah. Mozambique.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't really cover everything without touching that. And also, like the 1911, for example, the history behind the 1911 itself is really interesting. It was during the incursions in the Philippines. The Filipino scouts, which were U.S. allies, were fighting the rebels with U.S. support, and the rebels would get hopped up on PCP like substance. It wasn't PCP, but it was very similar, where they could take a bunch of shots of 32 ACP. So they had to create a firearm that had a bigger round with more knockdown power, and that's where you get the 45 ACP, and that's where you get the 1911.
Yeah, that's always been an interesting story. The idea that somebody, once guns are in the play, once guns are in the warfare, that somebody would take a bunch of drugs to be able to absorb the pain from those bullets until bullets got big enough to physically damage things that would not allow that to happen anymore. But there's a couple of places where I know of where drugs intertwine with all this. How many times did drugs and drugs in general come up in your research and in the book?
Well, in the book, I only mention it like one place, but it's still an issue today. For example, there's a drug in Africa called cot. And so a lot of people are going to like bigger rounds now in Africa from like the 223, which zips through these guys, and they're usually really skinny. In fact, they call them skinnies because they're so skinny and they're high on drugs. So the rounds zipped through them. So a lot of the people were going to like 308s and stuff like that in Africa. So drugs do have a place in the research, but I only touched on it like once. But there's tons there's tons of people using drugs to get over gunshot wounds and everything, even today. Which is interesting to me.
Yeah, I was thinking also like Colt in his story, it'll get into him selling nitrous oxide to be able to afford to put the company back together to build the revolvers for what's his name? What was the guy that bought they named him after him. I can't think of them. The big ones.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Like, yeah, he was basically a drug dealer. Too.
Yeah, seriously. He'd make like a hut or some kind of a room with nitrous oxide in it. People would pay a quarter to go in there, and that's what he was doing to get. What can I think of the name of the Colt Dragoon? Not the Dragoon. He built the good Dragoon, and then somebody said, "Hey, we need some other ones." The guy who's named him after. Anyway, then somebody out there in the audience will know what I'm trying to say. But then, yeah, and then I know Glock has some stuff going on too. So yeah, it's just interesting to hear. To when you start thinking about all the gun designers, and I mean it's probably anything out there, but how intertwined they are with the.
Are you talking about Daniel Levitt?
No, I'm thinking of the giant Colt that got his company started again.
Okay.
The colonel from Texas, or whoever he was from Texas, said, "Hey, build me these giant guns."
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting stories. Glock himself, I mean, there's some crazy stuff there with that company.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. And
I mean, there's some
80s I'm just going from the Glock America's Gun book and just from that, but and hearing some stories, I guess, from the industry. But
yeah,
Walker, it took me forever. Thanks, the Walker. Anyway, when Colt, the way I understood the story, if I'm remembering it right, he kind of went broke after building the first gun. It worked and everything, but it wasn't that great. So kind of went broke when Walker came along and said, "Hey, build me these bigger ones." He's like, "Yeah, sure, except I need to go get the money somehow first." So
yeah, it's definitely an interesting story. But there's a lot of interesting stories, like talking about Glock. Like there's in the 80s, it involved sheriff's departments, police departments, prostitutes, and a strip club.
yeah,
You say that.
and the 10, right? The 10 millimeter, like that whole thing.
Yeah, where they yeah, 10 millimeter. And then there's some other stuff between Smith and Wesson and Glock where Smith and Wesson ripped off the Glock and they knew they were going to get sued, but they had to do it as a stopgap.
And I'm sure there's other times in history where that kind of stuff, where conflicts came up and people just said, "Well, we got to copy them," or "Well, we got to do it this way."
Yeah, like Smith and Wesson, they definitely knew that they were going to get sued, but they needed a stopgap until they can develop their own gun. Polymer gun.
That made me think. Something made me think that are there any ammunition? Anything about ammunition? Any ammunition inventors?
Yeah, there definitely is. Flaubert, for example, came up with the round. A lot of these guys came up with the different calibers themselves. So they're mixed in. I mean, they're all firearms designers, but a lot of them actually came up with their own rounds, like John Moses Browning, for example, the 45 and stuff like that. So there is ammunition designers in here, but it's more of these guys design firearms and they design ammunition. Because a lot of these guys, when they design their guns, they designed it around their round. Like the 1911, they came, okay, we need to have a 45. Okay, now that we got the 45, we got to come up with a gun that shoots it.
Yeah, same with the 25. He's like, you know what? There should be a 25 ACP. Now I should build a gun for it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing. I know people in modern times, just from hanging out with people, that whatever, they got an itch. Like, you hear about it all the time with rifle calibers too. but they'll say, you know, I need a round that has more energy, or I need a round that shoots straight, or I need a round that's something. So they figure it out, they wildcat it or whatever, and they come up with the round. And then back in the day, yeah, they would just build a gun around it. It wasn't like, you know, just go buy a different barrel for this chassis. They just built the whole thing from the ground up sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people get confused. People think that the gun is designed first, and then they design the ammunition. And usually it's the other way around. It's the ammunition. It's like the chicken and the egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ammunition's the egg came first, usually.
And I think that's something that even gun people don't necessarily think about, but we think of ammunition oftentimes as an accessory for the gun, when in reality, the guns wouldn't exist until the ammunition existed.
Yeah, it's usually the other way around. And I think that, and I touch on that on a few different designers where I say, okay, they designed this round and now they needed to have a gun. And doing the research, you find out in most of the time that is the case. Basically, any type of like new round, the round was designed before the gun.
Got a lot of people out there watching us live. If you're listening in the future as a podcast or on the videos out there, feel free to leave questions. You can time travel essentially, and you can find John on pretty much not every night, but often live, and you can ask follow up questions there.
Yeah,
You
Monday
mentioned
through Thursday.
you mentioned on going to Rumble. I was going to ask you about that, so I'll take a minute here if you don't mind to. How's that going on Rumble? I've thought about it and I haven't really pushed it too much.
The live stream, okay, the standalone videos don't do too well. The live streams, we're pulling bigger numbers than we are on YouTube from episode 1 of Uncensored.
And essentially just chatting about the same kind of stuff, just not worrying about YouTube, whatever, terms of service stuff.
Yeah, but like our audience over Rumble is it's a whole different set of people. I mean, we do have crossover, but there's a whole different set of people, and it seems
okay.
like
So they're just an audience that's at Rumble, found you and digs it, as opposed to a bunch of people following you there. Okay.
I mean, there are people that followed us over there, but there's also the internal Rumble people, and right now Rumble's pushing live streams a lot, and the CPM's a lot higher.
Okay, that's awesome. So I'm gonna definitely put that on my shorter list of things to.
Yeah, it was just an experiment, and DLD After Dark, after I had success, he was like, I'm going to try it. And he had a lot of success. Flying Rich has had a lot of success over there since he did that. Shooting Gallery, used to be Shooting Gallery New England. We got him to go over there, and he's like, I don't know, I don't think I'll get a big audience. And he's had a lot of success. 2AEDU has. So for live streaming, it's.
Can you talk about like Shooting Gallery? Can he do gunsmithing? Can he talk about guns and stuff?
You can show guns, you can do gunsmithing, you can do everything.
Yeah, see, that's something that I definitely miss over here. It's like it's slowly eroded to where we can't even show them on thing. Back in the day, we could do whatever we wanted. It's literally anything we want. We'll go out shooting, bring the cameras out, and But okay.
Yeah, and Rumble, it's still the same thing. All that.
We kind of took a detour there, but I appreciate it. And I think there's enough content creators out here watching today that hopefully got something out of that too.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out Rumble live streaming, I'll definitely go there.
I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've used Rumble because I just didn't have much success putting videos over there. But I understand with, whenever you're on a platform and somebody just comes by and drops their copies of their videos, it's never interesting. It's when people interact that it's interesting. So do you have to qualify or do you have to pay or anything?
No. You have to create it. But yeah, it's really interesting that the live videos over there do so well compared to like if you drop a video.
Yeah, well, definitely. And then I'll just probably start doing it like what you're doing. Just do one of my shows a week over there and not have to try to simulcasting it or anything.
Yeah, if I drop a video, I'll get like 15 people watch it. If I go live, I have like 500 people.
Oh, okay. So it's definitely more of a live scene than a.
Yeah. We're pulling bigger numbers on Rebel than we are on YouTube with like no advertisement.
Yeah, well, that's a good advertisement for them. Now they're hooked up with Locals.
Yes, you can. Yeah, Locals integrates right into Rumble.
Well, I dig that. So is that blockchain, or am I mixing that up with one of the other ones?
I don't think Locals is blockchain. I don't think Rumble is blockchain either. Like BitChute's blockchain, Minds is blockchain.
Okay, I was thinking of Minds. I think I get mixed Minds and Locals mixed up. I usually just drop to each of those at kind of the same, but Local seems pretty good. So you've been on there for a long time. I think I went over there because you kept talking about it.
Yeah, Locals is good. They're pro freedom, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. They leave you alone. I don't have a ton of people interacting over there, but I also don't go live or nothing. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, they're free speech advocates. They don't care. I mean, they're not a gun platform, but they don't care if you post gun content or if you link to like affiliate links or anything like that.
Oh, well, that's super cool.
So you can like throw everything. Rumble, you can throw all your affiliate links in your description too.
Yeah, that's super good for the content creators out there. Know what that's all about.
Yeah, there's 280 right there.
Yep.
He's the guy that got me hooked up on Locals over there.
So you mentioned, going back to the book, you mentioned that Glock is the only living one. So was Barrett in the list?
Ronnie Barrett was in the list. There's actually a chapter on him. I might release.
So that was my question then. Was that one like you went over and chatted with him, or was it, again, resources and
just resources?
Okay. And then
one of the reasons why I chose to drop Ronnie Barrett is because I never got a chance to talk to him.
Oh, okay.
So if I do, I
wrote this before they sold to Australia or whatever.
No, I ended up writing it. I mean, the Barrett chapter was written after that.
Because that would have been interesting to address or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's mentioned anything about it since.
Yeah, I just couldn't get in touch with him. Couldn't nail down an interview or anything like that. So I was like, it would be if in the future, if I want to do something, it'd be interesting to have him like sit down and talk to him about it. So I'm just gonna drop it for now because I think there's more there that I can get out of it by actually talking to him. So
yeah, for sure. So then, since I've asked people that are watching live if they have any questions, feel free to ask. Oh, Wesley is asking, what is Locals? It's a social platform. It's more of
like a Patreon.
Oh, okay. I was going to say more of a communication or community. It's not like YouTube. You can post videos. You can post. It's more like a Facebook, I guess, or it's like a place to chat and to follow people and say hey and stuff. But it's not really like a video exclusively, and it's not photos exclusively. But I don't think there is any live or anything because they've hooked up with Rumble for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, you can still go live over there. 280 goes live on Locals every Saturday.
Oh, you can. Okay. So what's the affiliation with Rumble then? It's just they're connected. It's not like you do the.
I'm not really sure exactly if they have the same owner or whatnot, but you can just hook up your Locals, so it makes it easier for people to support you, or for your videos to be shared out to Locals or whatnot.
Okay, so Locals is more of a support thing then. It's I missed that. I guess it's like
yeah, it's kind of like a Patreon, but
okay. And then, so again, if people want to ask questions, ask them. Otherwise, I'm going to ask, since people are hopefully going to get the book. Let me ask some more of the people who got put to the cutting room floor. What were some of the examples of the people that got called?
Like you have Uzi, Barrett. Let me pull up my list here. It might be easier.
How many of them were still living? Was there many that were still living?
Yeah, like George Kellgren, for example, was still living. Ronnie Barrett, of course, was still living. But the other ones were dead. So I just pull up because I'll bring up my list and everything, so I can tell you exactly who made the cut to 35 and who made the cut to other.
So while you're looking, it'll be out on the 1st. So in a couple of days, people will be able to buy it. You can pre-order it already, though, and I've got the link out here. You can pre-order it for Kindle. So does that mean you can read it already off of Kindle, or
No, you can just pre-order it. It would be delivered
on the 1st?
Oh, one of the things I did have to cut is like brothers. There's a lot of brothers in the firearms world, like the Malver brothers.
And then the famous fathers. Well, there's a couple of father sons, but
Yeah, so
Maxim and Browning.
so I just kept it to one member of the family. One of the guys that I did cut that it was almost broke my heart that I cut it, but I figured I cut it anyway. Was Ludi.
I don't know that one. Is that his last name?
Yeah, Ludi is a guy that designed. He was a gun rights activist in the UK, and he designed the Ludi machine gun, which you can build. It basically was a machine gun that anyone can build in their garage with minimum skills.
Oh, okay.
It fell Ludi. He made it. He basically freaked out everyone in the UK.
Did he get killed or die or something?
He died.
I think I remember that then.
Yeah, Tokarev is another guy that I read about that I dropped.
Yeah, the Russians are interesting because they all kind of were working for the government, but at the same time, they all had their own ambitions, their own like thoughts of how a machine should work and theories and stuff. Just like I guess everywhere else, but they had a lot of. At least I get the impression they had a lot of. I don't know, intrigue. I don't know what the word is. Like a whole bunch of stuff going on, like a lot of drama.
One of the interesting guys that I really found out that was really interesting was Oliver Winchester.
Okay.
Do you know what he did before what the Winchester originally did?
Those shirts, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he was more of just literally the business person, right? And saw things that were coming and jumped on them, or was he happened to get things and fell into them? I don't know about that because it's history is you're gonna either fluff up the guy or you're gonna make him look like a jerk. But he certainly was in the right place at the right time. I don't know if it was all smooth sailing because the Vulcan and all that wasn't perfect, but the volcanic I guess wasn't perfect, but
Yeah. There's a lot of different people in there. Like Tokarev is a guy I really wanted to touch on, but
is Remington in there?
Remington's in there, yes.
Okay, Remington is one of my favorites too. Just at least the story I heard. Maybe again, it's fluffed up because people are trying to make him sound good. But his dad was like, "Hey, can I got a gun?" And his dad was like, "No, you can make a gun or no." And he's like, "Oh, I'll just make one then," and just kept making them.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a bunch of different people. One of the guys I kind of wanted to touch on, but I didn't. And maybe if I do like a follow up with leaders of the firearms world, and that is Justin Moon.
Oh, interesting.
Because
Yeah,
that's firearms and stuff, and his father who founded the Moonies.
Yeah, seriously. Now, I always heard that he did it to spite his dad, but I guess that's not the case so much.
Yeah, it's
His dad's
definitely
down with it.
interesting. His dad definitely was not pro gun.
Oh, okay, he was not, but now he is, I guess.
His dad is dead. Is dead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then there was a split between him and his family over control of the Unitarian Church and stuff like that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I don't know. Have you ever talked to him? Is that something that they talk about, or do they rather not talk about all that?
I've talked to him a few times, but nothing about that. He's a Facebook friend of mine, but I've not really talked to him anything besides, gun stuff.
Yeah, like a long time ago when I was really into doing gun stuff still, like strictly gun stuff, I did an interview with him about, I don't even remember which of the cars, but explaining the difference between their like standard model and their, fancier deluxe models. And I was like, wow, this guy's super cool. Like he really, described it for someone who knows what's up, but didn't talk over people's heads. He was just like really cool. And he obviously knew everything about what he was talking about. And, I'm not the biggest fan of the guns or nothing, but I can appreciate the company for as interesting as it is.
Yeah, another guy that I kind of wanted to touch on, but he didn't make the cut down to 35 was Nagant.
Yeah, well, I'm sure people would like to see that guy, but I never researched him. Does he have an interesting story?
I didn't get to the research part of him because I limited down to Tokarev and Kalashnikov for Russians.
Yeah,
I
for
didn't
me,
want to
it's always
Russians.
just talking, being focused on Kalashnikov, all the adjacent ones. So that's how I know Russian inventors is just how they associate with Kalashnikov. So I don't know that Nagant ever, if they even cross paths ever. There's a blind Russian firearms designer. I don't know if you know that guy.
No.
That might be an interesting one. So, do you think there'd be a book two, or is that too much of a pain, or is it like you can, like you were saying something about a supplement?
It might be a supplement. I don't originally I was like, well, maybe I do book 2, but then I mean, I don't know. I have other stuff I really want to write about. And in fact, like the next book I was gonna write is about 3D printing history.
That'll be cool.
But actually Rich is working on that right now. So I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna I'm not gonna touch it if he's already doing it.
Yeah, it'll still be an interesting thing. I don't know if really, I mean, I can remember it coming up on the radar here and there, but I've never seen anything like a documentary about it, or aside from a company bragging about their history, I haven't seen much about it, where it all comes from. I think
Yeah.
it's super old though, right? Like they invented it in like the 70s or something, right?
Yeah. 3D printing, the FDM 3D printer, which is all like what everything is based on, was actually invented by my cousin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Does he get like a cut of every printer?
I'm not really sure. I mean,
Cool. I
yeah,
wouldn't mind him to
it's
pull
on
up.
my dad's side, so I'm not really um too familiar with that side of the family.
Well, with getting into 3D, you already said you don't have, or that he's your only alive one. So Cody Wilson wasn't in there.
Cody Wilson was not in there. But yeah, but if Rich ever does anything with the 3D printing thing, I'm going to try to get him in touch with my cousin Scott, who is Scott Crump, who patented the 3D printer.
Very cool. So was that a long time ago, or am I crazy?
It depends on what you are.
I just thought I remember seeing something on like it was like even black and white, like where they were just showing some sort of things squirting out like caulk or something with the
Yeah,
robot.
it was different. It wasn't like the 3D printers that we know today, the FDM 3D printers.
Yeah, it was essentially just squirting stuff out of a bit on the end of whatever you call that, 3D, or what do they call those? Plotter.
Yeah, that's what it originally was like. Back in like I think it was like 89ish. I could be wrong, but that's when Scott came up with the or 88, I think it was. Now thinking about it, where he came up with
Well,
the
that's not,
FDM.
that was just yesterday
Yeah. So
for some of us.
interesting. I mean, I don't really talk to him. Didn't even realize he was like kind of not really was never really close to my dad's side of the family, so I didn't even know that he was my cousin until like a couple months ago.
Crazy. Well, you see the name, yeah, right? You figure it out.
Well, I saw the name. I knew I had a cousin with the same name that lived in the same town, and I knew he had a business, but I didn't know what the business. He started a business. He's retired now, so I was like, well, maybe it is. So I checked, and I was like, oh yeah, it looks like that would be him.
Well, switching gears to the book again, you this is your second one that I'm aware of. So, Speaking with Giants, interviews with Amaland from Amaland.
Yeah,
Um,
that was for charity. All the money for this is going to go to charity as well.
oh, so that's what this one was for
My niece Bella, yeah,
and she signed it also. That's pretty special. Appreciate that.
Yeah. She passed away a few years ago.
Now, what's this one's focus?
I have not decided yet. It's probably going to be Make a Wish Foundation though, or Ronald McDonald House. It's going to be one of the two.
Right on. I'm familiar with the Ronald McDonald House. They give people's families support when they're in the hospital doing some kind of work, right? They'll make sure the families are comfortable.
Yeah, we do a toy drive and supply drive for them once a year. So it's probably going to go to them. But I haven't decided yet. I'm not really even pushing that fact at all. Because, I haven't decided where it's going to go quite yet. It's going to go somewhere. I'm just not sure exactly where yet. It just depends.
Well, you've got a couple of days, I guess, before you have to start worrying about it. But,
yeah, it takes a little bit longer to actually get the money in.
Right, I'm just kidding.
So hopefully by the end of November, I'll pick something out and just give it to them. But like I said, that's not the purpose. I don't push that fact. It's just something that I do.
Now, do you have any idea of what kind of sales you're going to get? Any anticipation of what kind of?
I have no idea. I mean, it was just something that I wanted to write for a long time. It was more of I want to write this to write this, not I want to write this to sell a bunch of books. It's just I want to write it to share my passion with other people.
Right on. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Let's see. Is there anything that I should have asked that I didn't ask?
No. I do want to say that one of the guys that I really wanted to include in the book, but I ended up not including because I already had like George Luger and some other people was Werner Gruner.
That sounds familiar. But
MG42.
Okay. So I was going to say, sounds like an old one, but I would have definitely kicked the 9mm guy out of there. Nobody needs to hear about that.
Dude, the 9mm guy, I mean, everything's 9mm.
No, I know.
You can't remove him.
And he was kind of, he did a bunch of stuff at a time when nobody had done it yet. So I guess I understand.
Exactly. It was just.
Oh, is Walther in there?
Walther's not in there.
They got an interesting. That's again a father-son type of thing. The dad did stuff, and then I forget what they make revolvers. They made something, and then the son went to college and came back and said, like, Dad, we need to revolutionize the company, and they did, and that was back in like the 30s or something, or back in the day. So it's a good story.
Honestly, some of these guys have really cool stories. There's so many cool stories out there of these guys.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably not for all of us, or for us, they're probably all interesting. But like you say, figuring out the ones that are going to be universally or most universally interesting.
Well, can you imagine if this was over 1,000 pages?
I could definitely see two. But
it would have to be two. And but I wanted to move on to other things, so I cut it down. But you could go on for days and days and days.
well, you know what it would end up being? It would be like Vickers' book. It would be a big, giant coffee table book or something, and that would make it a little less approachable, a little less readable, I guess.
Exactly. So, and I want to work on other things as well. So I don't want to make a whole bunch of different volumes, like an encyclopedia of firearms designers.
Right.
For a certain time, I was like, maybe I should do like a volume 1, volume 2, and like, split it up into decades. But I was like, I don't want to.
Because if you're going to do that, you'd really want to sit down and start thinking about it. Volume 1 is going to be U.S. or Volume 1 is going to be chronologically first, and then how are you going to? What if you miss one, and now you got to have Volume 3 with one that should have been in Volume 2? You'd have to really know the whole scale before you started dividing them. Like you couldn't just start out and do a bunch of volumes. I don't think, unless you do it randomly.
Yeah, so I scrapped that pretty fast.
Right on. Well, we're gone an hour, and I didn't want to keep you too long here. I appreciate you taking some time and being our first kickoff of the interview series here. And we got to catch it. How many interviews have you done now for the book?
On this one, a few, like 3 or 4.
Right on. So we got to catch it before it came out. I know you were interested in trying to catch people so that they can. It probably helps out to pre-order on as far as the mechanisms of Amazon.
It's also on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free.
Right on. But still, interactivity with Amazon is definitely going to help the book out. The goal here is to get information about gun inventors. That's their lives and their stories, not just their machines. So that if someone out there wants to expand their interest and appreciation of guns, or explore the depth of guns and why we were fascinated by them, which isn't, of course, violence. But I think it's cool. And if you're interested in supporting Crump, then grab a book. But if you're also interested in the idea especially for $10, we're allowed the price. It's $10. It's not like it's a massive investment as a capitalist, but you can pre-order this thing, get this thing hit with a bang. I mean, that's just a cool thing, getting a gun book out there, hitting the ground as fast as, or with as much momentum as we can. So I'm going to encourage anybody that's listening to grab the link there in the description. I'm going to throw it out here again, and pre-order it. Again, we're capitalists. This is how we reallocate our capital for stuff that we value.
Yeah.
Hope you don't mind. It's not too embarrassing for me to push it for you there, but
no.
Right on.
And to answer Kim Harper's question, I did not touch on the founding of Bushmaster or anything. Which is now, as of a few days ago, I guess it's a Czech company now.
That's a whole other story. Well, let's get together again and talk to current events.
Yeah,
we didn't really do any of the let's chat since the last time we chatted or nothing. But anyway, you can catch Crump Tuesday through Friday on the YouTube, Monday on Rumble.
No, Monday through Friday on YouTube. We do 2 shows on Mondays, 5 to 6 on YouTube for John Crump Live, then 10 to 11:30-ish on Rumble at Uncensored Podcast. So if you go to like rumble.com/c/uncensored podcast, that's us. It's a Rich Dark from DLD After Dark and I am over there.
Right on. Well, I'll definitely see you over there. I'm going to start digging into Rumble myself. Of course, then you're also a writer for Ammoland and GOA. Well, work with GOA and
I have a day job.
So I can appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again.
All right. Thank you.